Here on the ground, change happens fast. Problems feel frequent and urgent. It's loud and anxiety runs high. From a satellite view, the Earth looks the same as it did thousands of years ago. We've been here before. Let's learn from our past and shoot for a better future.
So, Savannah, are you ready to make your voices heard? Do we believe in freedom? Do we believe in opportunity? Do we believe in the promise of America? And are we ready to fight for it? And when we fight, God bless you and God bless the United States of America.
Yes, that is in Savannah, Georgia this week. Kamala Harris, of course, is now turned into a rock concert where the audience knows the songs and they love singing along. Huge audience. Just goes on and on. I mean, the enthusiasm. We're going to talk about some real numbers, not poll numbers. I mean, we can mention some poll numbers, but we're going to talk about some real numbers about Democratic enthusiasm and things like that. Thanks for listening to this episode of A Satellite View. I'm Todd Mikkelson, your host, speaking at you from Sunday, September 1st, 2024, in the space and time continuum. We're heading into election season hard now. Tomorrow is Labor Day. Pretty much right after Labor Day is when things really start moving. People start paying more attention. This year, I think it's a little different because I think that has already begun. But it's still going to intensify. I just put up signs today for our local people. Tracy Brazil is running for the same seat I ran for years ago. I brought the numbers up from 29% as a base vote for the Democrats in this district. I brought it up from 29% to 38%. Everyone thought I was a hero, even though I only got 38%. I got my ass handed to me. It hurt. It felt like somebody kicked me in the teeth. I cried. Not happy tears like you've been hearing me do for the last couple of weeks. Still, I was congratulated because my campaign began an enthusiasm in this district. Our last candidate brought it up to 47.5, I believe, if I'm remembering. I didn't look it up. I'm going off the top of my head. That's getting close. Tracy Brazil is going to be an incredible candidate. She's running a great campaign. Her door-knocking numbers are insane. So she's got a real chance of winning. And if she won this district, that would be quite amazing. We're coming further and further out. We're talking the furthest out for this district is more than 30 miles away from Minneapolis. The rings around the cities. Also, of course, I put up a sign for Kelly Morrison, my friend who's now running for Dean Phillips' seat. Dean Phillips is not running this time. Dean Phillips, although his stuff that he did at the end, starting about a year ago, we're not happy with what he did and how he did it. He is seeing that it was a mistake to overlook Kamala Harris. He wanted Biden to drop out. Of course, Biden did drop out. And I think Dean thinks that everyone thinks, oh, wow, Dean was right. Nope, Dean was not right. The only person to replace Biden is Kamala Harris, and he overlooked her. So he's not running for Congress. My friend Kelly Morrison, who, oh, by the way, I was going to end that, though, by thanking Dean Phillips for being the first person to win in Congress in this area, in this district, where I've lived most of my life. 1958 was the last time we had a Democratic win for Congress in this area. Dean Phillips won in 2018, the same year that Kelly Morrison brought Democratic representation for the first time in the state history here in Minnesota in this area where I grew up. She won the House seat on the B side. I'm on the A side. She's on the B side. She won in her first try. She has yet to lose. She's never going to lose an election. She's turning into a star now. She's been on CNN last week. She was on MSNBC. I probably don't even know some. I probably missed a couple times she was on TV. And she's doing a great job because she's an OBGYN. And she is one of 2 or 3 women who are OBGYNs who are pro-choice. We have yet to have an OBGYN who is pro-choice in Congress. That's what Kelly's running for. I got my sign in my yard for her. Just put it up. And I also got signed that the DFL here in Minnesota, which is our Democratic Party, the Democratic Farmer Labor Party, they made their own damn Harris Wall signs and have started to distribute them already. I've seen a few go up, and mine is up. So we got ours up in our yard because our enthusiasm has always been high. High enough that I ran in an extremely red district, only to get my ass handed to me 2 times. I did it 2 times. But now we're doing a lot better. So here are some numbers. Now, these are not poll numbers. These are real numbers that real people are doing. This is young women voter registration. So these are people who registered to vote for the first time. Okay, these are people registering to vote. These are not polls. These are real numbers. So we're talking basically in this new era of excitement. Very recent voter registration for young women is up 83.7%. Black Americans is up 85.8%. Black women, it is up 98.4%. Almost 2 times more. Young Latinas, up 149.7%. This is voter registration. Young black women, up 175.8%. It's insane. It is insane. Now, these people, of course, are also the most likely to vote. And they're most likely to not be a part of polls because they're not listed as likely voters because they haven't voted yet. They're just registering now. So they won't be a part of any polls of likely voters. All right? But of course, they are the most likely of voters. And all these demographics, young women, black Americans, black women, young Latinas, and young black women, they vote for Democrats. And of course, young black women and young women are all, and young Latinas, because they're also women, are very fired up about women's health care rights, women's reproductive health care rights. Now, this is a number that is sort of Polish, not from Poland, but Pole-like, like a Pole. Again, not a Polish person. Oh my God. Can I dig out of this hole? Can somebody show? No, I don't need a shovel. That makes the hole deeper. Okay, can I climb out of this hole? So this is more like polling. There, I think I'm out of the hole. Democratic enthusiasm is up 78% right now. A lot of people are saying that that is the highest since 2008, which of course is huge. Among Republicans, their enthusiasm is up 64%. Now think about also the fact that only about 30% of Americans are registered Republicans. So 64% of about 30%, you're talking what? Maybe 17%? Whereas Dem enthusiasm, I'm not sure what the percentage of Americans who are registered Democrats. I'm thinking it's probably something in the 60s or something. 78% of then 60% is a lot more than 64% of 30%. That sounds confusing. Sorry to get too number wonky. But the fact that Democratic enthusiasm is the highest since 2008 In 2008, of course, it was insane. Barack Obama. It was Barack Obama's year, and American Democratic enthusiasm had never been that high. It was insane in 2008, and now it's back to that. I would say even more enthusiasm. You heard that crowd at the beginning of the show there with Kamala Harris in Savannah, Georgia. Savannah, Georgia, a place where Democrats had not campaigned since the 1990s. And that's the most populous place that she went. She and Tim Walz were campaigning in South Georgia, rural South Georgia. There's a really nice clip of her and him stopping in at a little band rehearsal at a school, a high school. And of course, Kamala knows how to talk to kids. Does Trump? I'll be dating her in 10 years. She's too young now, but not too young for me, but people don't like it. People don't like it. So I got to wait 10 years and I'll be dating her. If, what's her name wasn't my daughter, I'd probably be dating her. Oh, I've actually thrown her name out of my brain. PTSD, Trump PTSD. I can't remember his daughter's name. Some Russian, Levanki. I can't, seriously, Ivanka. There it is. These are real numbers, not polls, not asking people their opinion, not hoping that they answer their phone. This is voter registration numbers. Pretty incredible. Here's another number. There were projections of American GDP growth done in 2019 before we knew anything about a pandemic coming. We have exceeded those projections, even with a pandemic. This is in 2019, a couple months before the pandemic. 2020 occurs. Of course, our GDP went way down because we had to shut down, because Trump could not handle a pandemic whatsoever. He screwed it up in a colossal proportions. And then starting in 2021, we begin to grow our GDP, and we have exceeded projections from 2019. Also, real numbers, a huge boom in people starting new businesses. That began after the pandemic. Of course, under Biden-Harris. Do you still stand behind Bidenomics? Goddamn right. Look at how well it's been working. What about something that I don't know much about? I'm not a huge part of. I think we've got somebody investing some of our money here and there. But I don't think that we should be putting as much credence on the stock market numbers as we do in how it shows where the economy is going. But the stock market is up 50% from when Trump was president. That's a lot. Keeps breaking records. If you remember, I think it was about 3 weeks ago on Monday morning, people were starting the hashtag Kamala crash because the stock market had one bad day. And Donald Trump was like, here it comes, it's the Kamala crash. It's the Kamala crash. She doesn't know what she's doing with the economy. Even though she's not the president right now, Biden has been president. Our economy is doing really quite well. There's still some price issues Kamala's been talking about. And some people are still hurting. Of course, that's always going to be happening. They tried to make us think that the stock market was going to crash. Here comes the recession 3 weeks ago. They were able to say that for 10 or 15 minutes. And then, of course, it rebounded. And within a couple days, it broke records again of the stock market going up in one day. It's above 40,000. I mean, it was in the 20s and below that, even just, 15 years ago. These are real numbers we're talking about. These aren't polls. You know how I feel about polls, but polls are going to start getting a little more accurate because more people are becoming part of the polls. But still, you always got to keep in mind that all these people I've mentioned, they're most likely to not be part of the polls. So if there are poll numbers, you can count on the fact that the Democrat number, the Democratic, if it's Kamala Harris or whoever it is, it's going to be likely higher in reality. When we come back, we're going to be talking about some of those numbers. Also, we're going to be talking about polls that are smaller and more pointed, more local. You're polling a lot less people. There are a lot less people involved. So when you do a poll, you're actually polling a higher percentage of the people than in a national poll. So we're going to come back after the break here, and we're going to talk about some more incredible things. Not a lot of bad news. There's a lot of comedy. A lot of comedy. J.D. Vance getting booed by firefighters because he goes to their union and says that he and Trump are the best administration for workers. You know, okay, that's not true. So he got booed. You know, a lot of comedy. A horrible thing Trump did at Arlington National Cemetery. I'm sure you've heard about that. And like I said, some of the real news the news that is more easily found, I'm not going to cover as much of that. So I'm probably not going to talk about the Arlington thing, but I'm going to talk about some really interesting things that I dug up that I think you'll be interested in as well. Tell you about those things when we come back on A Satellite View. I'm Todd Mikkelson, your host. We'll be right back.
About an era that started about a decade ago, where there is some suggestion, warped I believe it to be, that the measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down, instead of where I believe most Americans are, which is to believe that the true measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you lift up.
And we're back on A Satellite View. That was Kamala Harris from this last Thursday evening, when she finally did her interview that everybody was bugging her to do, that I think she didn't have to do. But she did it. And of course, she did great. I mean, it was just sort of a normal interview, which I think people find surprising, because I'll play you in a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit about what she just said first. But I'll play you what an interview with Trump is like, which I think, like Kamala just said, starting about a decade ago. It's when the craziness started, and of course the media ended up normalizing it over the last 10 years. Kamala Harris wants us to get back to where we were before that, not in policy, just in being dignified if you're in office, if you're the president of the United States. Of course, Biden has been, but she's talking about Trumpism and MAGAism. And we need to get rid of that, both of those things. And I believe she has us on a course where that is going to happen very soon now. I don't have a ticker of how many days until Election Day, but I think we're in the 60s somewhere. Maybe even getting into the mid to low 60s as far as how many days until Election Day. It's getting more and more exciting. Now, Republicans are running out of things to complain about. They've been complaining about, oh, well, how come she won't sit down for an interview? Well, she sat down for an interview. Well, when she does sit down for an interview, she's too stupid to do an interview. Her interview is going to be what kills her campaign. Well, that didn't happen. If Biden gets in office, we're going to have a recession. Okay, Biden's been in office for almost 4 years. No recession. One bad day on Wall Street. And you made as much out of it as you could. I give you some credit for that. You know, that 15-minute period of time, you yelled pretty loud. So you can't complain about a recession. You can't complain about the economy. You can't complain about GDP. You can't complain about unemployment. You can't complain about inflation. You can complain that, yeah, we still need to bring prices down, but you know who the only person who's been talking about that and starting to talk about how she's going to go about it is Kamala Harris. Trump doesn't have any proposals. J.D. Vance doesn't have any proposals. They just do like what Kamala Harris said, knocking people down, pushing people down, making people feel down, trying to convince people that the United States is down. It's a horrible place. Well, it's not. It's really not. And of course, things can always be better. So why would we keep making things worse by putting Republicans in charge, or conservatives, really? We still got to be careful. People are sticking up for conservatives because they're saying, well, real conservatives are not Trumpers. Well, they're still conservatives. Ronald Reagan did more damage to this country than any previous president, I believe. I truly believe that. I mean, you could go way back to pre-Civil War times, talk about a couple bad presidents, but even though the Civil War ended up happening, and we went through a lot of pain and reconstruction, Ronald Reagan decimated the American economy for decades. We had a little bit of revival there under Clinton. Some of that was the bubble of like new internet. Of course, George W. Bush came in and tanked it into a recession. It was all Obama could do to basically get us back to zero. We had such a huge hole to try and climb out of. Notice I didn't say dig out of, because you don't dig out of a hole. Digging in a hole makes the hole worse. We went through that in the last segment. Anyway, so that's why I wanted to play you that particular clip. Now let's talk about some of the things I told you we were going to talk about. In this election, some poll numbers. Ruben Gallego is running against Kari Lake in Arizona. His numbers since Kamala Harris have gotten in have gone way up. He is now 15 percentage points ahead of Kari Lake. Democrat Ruben Gallego, 15% ahead of Republican Kari Lake, running for Arizona Senate. In Nevada, the Democrat is ahead by 14 points in a big race there. North Carolina, for the governor, Stein is ahead by 11 points against the crazy person that the Republicans decided to have as their candidate. So Republicans picking the most crazy of the crazies to be their candidates, and Democrats doing better and better. You could see at the convention, we've got so many good people in elected office in the Democratic Party right now that the whole convention was filled with nothing but great speech after great speech, whereas in the past, usually it would be, man, that one or two speeches at the convention were really great. Now, every single one, I can't pick. I went through that a couple episodes ago, so go listen to that. Maybe it was last week. I don't know. Anyway, now this Ruben Gallego poll is going to be more accurate because, like I said, you've got a smaller pool of people. You're pooling the state of Arizona instead of polling the whole country. Some country-wide polls have Kamala Harris tied in Arizona, which is an improvement on what Biden was doing. But still, like I said, any poll like that, I have been saying for a long time, you can add 5 percentage points to the Democrat who's in that poll. So I think that in reality, Kamala Harris is ahead by 5 percentage points. If the election were today, Kamala Harris would win Arizona by 5 to 7 percentage points. Ruben Gallego is 15% ahead. Now, do you think those people in that poll are going to vote for Donald Trump? They're going to vote for Ruben Gallego, the Democrat, for Senate, and then up-ballot, they're going to vote for Donald Trump? Coupled up with the Democratic enthusiasm we talked about in the last segment? That's why I'm talking about these things. Nevada. That person's ahead 14 percentage points. I believe it's a Senate seat. It might be a House seat. But it's a National Congress seat. It's not a state seat. Ahead by 14 points. You think that's going to help Kamala Harris? Yes. Yes, it is. North Carolina governor's race. Yes, it is going to help her. Anna Paulina Luna is a Luna in Florida. She's one of the craziest maggots in Congress. And of course, she used to be a model, I think. Those are her credentials for being a congressperson. The only thing I agree with her on is that She wants to get more truthful information about, what's going on in the UAP/UFO/ different off-Earth aliens visiting us. She wants to get more truth in that. She was on that committee. That's the only thing I've ever seen her say where I'm like, oh, I agree with her. Otherwise, she's a Luna. Anna Paulina Luna is losing in her deep ruby red district by 4 percentage points right now. So that's a House seat. Now you're polling even less people than a state. You're polling a much smaller amount of people, and you're paying for your polling, and it's done more efficiently because it's a local poll. So therefore, it's probably more accurate. She's in a deep red district in Florida, and she's losing by 4 percentage points. That is mind-blowingly incredible. A lot of information in Florida, a lot of people making videos and releasing them and being parts of other productions where they're saying, hey, I'm blah, blah, blah from Florida. I'm a former Trump voter. I will never vote for him again. Amendment 4 in Florida is on the ballot. People are in favor of Amendment 4, 61% to 25% against it. Trump has gone back and forth on it now a couple times, at least once, if not a couple times, because pro-lifers are getting really pissed at him. He said he was going to vote in favor of Amendment 4. What Amendment 4 would do in Florida would get rid of, Ron DeSantis' 6-week abortion ban. 6-week abortion ban when most women don't even yet know they're pregnant. So basically, it is a complete abortion ban statewide in Florida. People don't like it. Amendment 4 would codify Roe v. Wade in the Florida Constitution. And people are in favor of it, 61% to 25%. Therefore, Donald Trump said he's going to vote yes for it because he really screwed himself here. He's tried to go with popular. Everyone's saying, oh, you got to vote for it because 61% of Floridians want to vote for it. How can you go against 61% of Floridians? Well, then pro-lifers really climbed up his, what would be a word we could use here on the podcast? My dad used to use the term bunghole, which I think is more gross than anything. So I hate to use it, but I think it is a good way of describing where pro-lifers climbed into Donald Trump's entity there. And so he changed. In an interview just a couple days ago, he said he's going to vote against, he's going to vote against it. It's hard to keep it straight in your head. He's going to vote against it, therefore basically staying with the pro-lifers in keeping a 6-week abortion ban. That's going to hurt him to Florida voters. When they hear that he's against them, there might have been people kind of on the fence going, okay, Donald Trump is being sensible here. He's being sensible by voting in favor of Amendment 4. So I think I might vote for him. Well, then he goes, no, I'm voting against it. That's going to hurt him in Florida. Anna Paulina Luna, in a absolute, there's nobody ever thought a Democrat could win in her district. She's losing to her Democratic opponent right now, 2 months before Election Day. This is insane. This is insane. Also, Florida is not the only place that has women's reproductive health care on their ballots. Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Maryland, Missouri, Nevada, New York, and South Dakota. They all have women's reproductive health care on their ballots, which is going to really bring more Democrats. We saw what happened in Kansas and Ohio. This is really going to help Kamala. You think Democrats who usually don't vote, but they're going to vote because their reproductive health care is on the line, their rights are on the line, their rights could be taken away. That's going to make them go to the polls. You think then they're going to vote for Donald Trump? They're all going to vote for Kamala Harris. It's going to be a higher Democratic voter turnout. Democratic enthusiasm is at 78%. Republican enthusiasm is at 64%. Everybody says Joe Biden was going to hurt down-ballot people because maybe people wouldn't show up to vote. Therefore, if you're running for Congress or if you're running even for a state house or Senate, you might be losing votes because Biden is making people not go to the polls. Now the opposite is happening. Plus, in all these states I just mentioned, even more enthusiasm for Democrats to turn out at the polls. Now we're talking about things down ballot helping the upper ballot people all the way up to Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. I'm telling you, this is all like there's going to be a huge blowout. I wanted to spend more time than what we have left also talking about the absolute shambles of the Republican Party. I will get to, next week I will talk about this, all right? I'll even start with it. I promise I won't forget, because we need to talk about the absolute shambles the Republican Party is in separate states. What's going on with Republican Party state chair people, including going back in time a couple years to what happened here in Minnesota, which is pretty unbelievable. And also like what I've been reporting about what they're spending their very little amount of money on. And we'll talk about how very little amount of money they have compared to Democrats. So that's another factor going on in this election cycle. The Republicans don't have the resources to run proper campaigns. What the absolute F and F is Trump doing? He's not running a campaign. Yeah. Okay, so I played you a couple clips of Kamala in her interview. I mentioned that I would play you a little bit of what Trump does in an interview. Now, I need to intro this. Republicans want, as part of the budget, they want the SAVE Act to be a part of it. The SAVE Act is just a bunch of BS. The SAVE Act will make sure that illegal people, illegal aliens, they call them, can't vote. Okay, well, that's already a law. People who are here illegally or are not registered as citizens can't vote. They can't register to vote. They can't vote. That's been a law since forever. And the Republicans are trying to get this put in so that anyone who votes against it is in favor of having illegals vote. It's just such intense BS. Enough so that Mitch McConnell is against having the SAVE Act in the budget. Therefore, Donald Trump's calling for a shutdown. But mostly, I had to do that intro so that you knew what they were talking about here. Mostly, just listen. I played you some of Kamala Harris. Now I'll play you her opponent.
You know, on the SAVE Act, Mr. President, it was reported a couple of days ago.
By the way, the woman in this, it's her podcast, Monica Crowley. She's just a silly person. But this is her podcast where she's asking Trump this question. I'll go back and start it again.
You know, on the SAVE Act, Mr. President, it was reported a couple of days ago that Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell opposes including it in the spending bill. So if that is true, I guess he wants illegals voting in huge numbers, which would likely mean your defeat. So what would you like to say to Senator McConnell and other Republicans who might oppose this? And if they don't get it into the bill, would you support shutting down the government over it?
I would shut down the government in a heartbeat if they don't get it, and if they don't get it in the bill. And, part of the problem is they gave away trillions and trillions of dollars to these people on the Green New Deal, on the Inflation Reduction Act, which wasn't even meant to be for inflation reduction. They named it that so it sounded good. Now, if they don't get these bills, they should close it down, and Republicans should not approve it. Now, I would disagree with them in that you can get a lot. I mean, look at the debt ceiling. Look what happened with debt ceiling. They extended it into the term of the next president.
So you were calling today on
nothing.
Senator. I'm sorry, sir.
Nothing for it.
Right. Are you calling on Senator McConnell?
The term of the next president and got nothing for it.
Are you calling on Senator McConnell then and all Senate Republicans to make sure, and House Republicans too, to make sure the SAVE Act is in the spending bill?
Well, it should be in the bill. For some reason, they don't do it. They don't do things that can really help our nation. It should be in the bill. And if it's not in the bill, you ought to close it up.
You can just tell that he has no idea what she's talking about. He has no idea what the SAVE Act is. She walks him into it to make sure that, basically she's hinting at what his answer should be. And so they want it to be part of the budget. If the budget doesn't get passed, then there's a government shutdown. And he's saying they should shut it down. He has no idea what he's talking about. And then he goes into all these other things that are totally not related because I don't even know what he thinks. And then every time she tries to talk, he starts talking and just repeating what he just said. And this is probably one of the more, I should say, less insane. I was going to say more sane. None of them sound remotely sane. This is one of the less insane sounding that Trump has been for a very long time now. Yeah, I don't know. Can you see a difference there between interviewing Donald Trump and interviewing Kamala Harris? I think you can. Thank you so much for listening. We've gone overtime again. Next week, I promise, we'll start with the shambles of the Republican Party, and I'll try and remember that. I'm writing it down, so I should be able to remember because I don't need to remember because I'm writing it down. Anyway, again, thank you so much for listening to this episode. I've had a lot of fun. I'm starting to have more and more fun. I mean, the darkness has left the earth, and we're in a higher vibration. Oh my, it's so much nicer. I feel so much more free to, I don't know. It's not that I wasn't free before, but, I hope you're feeling better too. We will keep each other sane. We've only got a little more than 60 days before the election. I'm getting very excited. I hope you are too. I put my signs up today out in the yard, getting fired up for all of our great candidates up and down the ballot, preparing for a probable landslide. All right. Thanks again for listening. We'll speak at you next week.
You've been listening to A Satellite View with Todd Mikkelson. Go to toddmikkelson.com for links and more information.